So yesterday I was ki- kind of thinking and talking about video game redemption arcs, how a game had like a bad launch but came back from it, and I was interested to see like other examples people came up with, and one that I can't believe I forgot, like probably one of the better examples besides like No Man's Sky was Final Fantasy XIV. The game was finished at launch. It just wasn't what people wanted. It just wasn't good, and they did one of the ballsiest moves that I've ever heard of um in gaming. Like, you know, you would think a company called Creative Business Unit 2 wouldn't have it in them, but they they blew up the game. Like, in lore, right? They, like, blew it up and, like, started over. They, they just did a soft reboot of an MMO. Like, it is the craziest thing, and the best part of it is that it worked. It came back better and stronger than ever and has, like, done done it had some growing pains. There was some, like, vestigial tales left over from, like, the previous version of it because they didn't, launch a brand new product. They, like, retooled an existing game, like, after it had already launched, and that's just, like, just absolutely baffling, like, 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 Yoshi P is a visionary. It's crazy. So yeah, like, absolutely great example. And that actually kind of got me thinking about like MMOs and other like live service games. And one of you know people have lots of issues with them, and like like uh, but like I want to kind of like rein it in a little because and just talk about like one aspect of them, and that's being launched in an unfinished state. Like, that's I'm sorry. One of the biggest problems with live service games is that, like, they're selling an unfinished product. I mean, like, imagine if you're at a restaurant and some in the waitress like sits like like a sandwich on your table, and it's just a plate of bread, and they're like, "Oh, it's fine. Just like time, as we get to it, we'll bring out like the rest of the sandwich. We'll bring out like the cheese and the meat like later, and maybe some toppings. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like, we'll give you a we'll give you a roadmap for when the toppings might be here, and you can decide if you want to wait for it or maybe eat somewhere else, right? Like, it's insane to me um that like we accept it. But I mean, it's one of those, like, well, what can you do? So I was thinking about like some of the games like that I've played. There's better examples that I haven't. And if you're somebody that like played a game that like was just completely unfinished at launch, like, and you want to like share your experiences on it, like, I would be very happy to like read them or like listen to them if you've got like a video about it or something. Like, I just find that stuff really interesting. But uh like, I suppose like the biggest one that I can think of is playing MMOs that launch with no real in-game content, like Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, swtor. Like, you play through the class quest, and then you kind of got dumped out on the daily planet. Like, there was like two daily areas. There was like Ilum and Coruscant, and you could just sort of like do those areas over and over, and there was like a handful of like dungeons, but like, there was like the max level version of dungeons that you had done like leveling. But like, it was like, okay, we're gonna, we're going to just launch with the leveling experience, and then everybody can just keep subscribing in a holding pattern, and like and it's fine. You've invested your money and time, you'll just stick around, and we'll get the rest of the content out like as we feel like it. And it's weird, like as like MMO players, like I we we don't just accept it, we kind of expect it, right? Like I remember I remember like when I was first playing like Warcraft, I World of Warcraft, I started in vanilla, and I like it was pretty naive. It was my first like big game. Like I had played I played Star Wars Galaxies and EverQuest 2 around the same time, but like the scope of Warcraft was like a little bit different. So like I don't know. I kind of think of it as like my big game. But I remember, like, going through the leveling experience, which took me a really long time because I didn't know what I was doing. There wasn't, like, quest markers, like, and, when there was, like, Alakazam or something, but there wasn't really like questy or like so many guide sites or anything. I mean, like I think the reason so many guides for the game existed is because it was so confusing originally in game. There like the quest descriptions would tell you where to go. It was very similar to like Morrowind, which isn't everybody's cup of tea. But yeah, like for me, it was totally fine. I'd read the quest, explore the area, find the thing maybe, and I just enjoyed the experience and I took my time. But there was a lot of areas that were unfinished, like completely unfinished. And I like remember thinking, "Oh wow, what is this going to be?" Like there was like these portals in the world, and there were like world dragons um guarding them. And a lot of my friends joked that they were guarding unfinished content, right? And I would go up and like look at the portals and wonder where they would lead someday. And I remember going around to Shara, like, and I'm like, what is any of this? Like, you know, like, um, because the Eastern Kingdoms content was pretty finished. So a lot of those zones were, scuffed, but they were okay. But Kalimdor was very neglected. Like Dorotar and the Barrens and those kind of areas were a little more fleshed out because they were like kind of a starter experience. But like um the the area outside of Ashenvale and what not Thousand Needles, what's the like construction area that you go to like just outside of Ashenvale? I don't even remember. But like I really kind of liked the feeling of like the Night Elf areas. They were just kind of nice. So like I would go over and do Darkshore and Ashara, not Ashara, Darkshore and Ashenvale, on like some of my like human and other alts, just because I liked it. But man, some of those really really sucked. Or like in on Hort's side, Silver Pine Forest was really, really bad. And on either side, Hillsbrad wasn't that great either. And there was like a lot of areas where I was like, what is this gonna be? This is so interesting, right? And I had kind of like a naive curiosity about it. And then like the curiosity quickly like melted into disappointment when I realized that they were making expansion islands where they were like, okay, we're neglecting the original world. We're not gonna finish it. We're not gonna add more zones. We're going to we're going to just have, you know, islands of new content, and everybody's going to just leave the entire game behind and go off and do stuff here. And I was like, it was kind of fun for Burning Crusade because I'm like, oh wow, there's like this alien kind of looking thing and everything's all torn up, and this is so interesting in contrast to the fairly grounded realism of like a lot of the classic world areas. But then, when Wrath, like, yeah, like, it doesn't seem right that, like, Wrath was right after Burning Crusade, but I guess it was, wow. But yeah, Northrend was really cool, but again, we're going to a whole new place with new stories, and that's nice and everything, but it's like, "Hey, come on, like, what about the world of Warcraft? Can we see some more of that?" And then, and then much like Final Fantasy 14, there was Cataclysm, where they decided to revamp some of the questing experience, which was much needed, but unfortunately, doing so changed the feeling of the world in it completely changed the feeling of the world, and it can be argued back and forth for better or for worse. Um, but a lot of it was done for like practical reasons, like they wanted to add flying that they had introduced in Burning Crusade, and there was a lot of map scenes that they needed to hide because there was a lot that they could hide visually when the models were, grounded, but viewed from above you would see all the holes and like tops of the hills that were like left unpainted and everything. And a lot of that became the Deathwing burn scars because they were kind of hiding zone seams because it, anybody who's gone back and played classic can go and experience like what the world looked like before that. like I'm not a big fan of the idea of classic Cata because I feel like the game changed irrevocably when they redid a lot of the areas, and some of them were improved, like especially like the questing experience of Silverpine, like that one really sticks out as better. But then some of them, like they changed the entire story, and I liked the story for the area. So it kind of sucked that it's like, you know, that it was kind of gone forever. I was a person that enjoyed replaying older quests on alts and stuff because it was kind of cozy. Sometimes I like to just turn off my brain and go through and do kind of repetitive game content while I'm like watching something on my other monitor. Like just kind of, I've got like a show on and I'm just kind of like grinding out like materials, or I'm just kind of going through like starter or low level content that's kind of easy, and I don't know, it's just a way that I like to relax, well, kind of replaying stuff that I'm already familiar with, instead of like, full focus, full, one monitor on kind of stuff that's more of a challenge. But yeah, and I was trying to think of like other games where they kind of they kind of sold you like a kit where they're like, okay, we'll give you the rest of the pieces later. And like I don't know, I've seen Age of Conan mentioned. It really did feel unfinished. But that wasn't all of its problems. But yeah, um, from what I've seen, like Conan Exiles is a more finished version of it, so they did kind of go back and finish it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I suppose like quite a few MMOs launched without much in the way of in-game content, and that was a lot of its updates. And I understand that like there just never will be enough time to like make something with the scope of an MMO. I mean, you can't have like 15 years of development, like five to make the game, and then years of updates with like no players. I understand that there's not like an easy answer to it, but I kind of wonder why it's so standard, and something that like a lot more people have that's a lot less complicated, is single player experiences, or like games that are smaller in scope, like maybe they're just co-op instead of multiplayer, like when early access games, you understand what you're signing up for, and when it's done properly, like Coffee Stain does early access really well with like Satisfactory and Valheim, because they actually communicate with the community and give updates, like that are kind of tooled towards the existing audience for the game, and that's kind of nice. But you understand what you're getting when you buy an early access game, and you can, make a decision whether or not, like Pal World recently was like really successful, and it's not in its fully playable state yet, but it was in enough of a playable state that a lot of people feel, like they had a good experience. And then there's some other games that are, you know, like they're still kind of like, placeholder assets, and like missing so many features that it's like, okay, this is really interesting to kind of run around in, but there's no way that this is like an enjoyable, like, finished experience. Um I um I'm trying to think of like another one that all right. Well, what's one that like that you've experienced, and like I guess another one question is like, was there like an early access game that you feel like they never finished? Because like I was trying to think of examples of that, but I mean like because I know of some, but none come to mind right now. Anyway, take care.